The morning of my graduation, I woke up with a strange mix of excitement and dread. I had worked for years, juggling late-night classes and part-time jobs, dreaming of the day I would finally walk across that stage. But when I called my parents to share the news, there was silence on the other end, a silence that spoke louder than any congratulations could. I had always believed they would be proud of me, that my achievements would finally earn their respect. Yet, my parents had other plans, or rather, no plans to include me in theirs. Instead of joy, they sent me an unexpected text: "We won't be attending your graduation. Your sister's commitments come first." I stared at the message in disbelief, my hands trembling as the phone slipped from my grasp. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a deliberate dismissal, a clear signal of where I stood in the family hierarchy. I realized then that no amount of success could buy love or attention from them. They had already decided who mattered. The day of the ceremony arrived, and I stood among my classmates, feeling both proud and empty. As my name was called, I walked across the stage, clutching my diploma, while imagining the faces that should have been in the crowd. They were not there. My parents had chosen absence over pride, my sister over me. After the ceremony, friends and mentors celebrated. Yet the emptiness lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. I thought about all the late nights I had endured, all the sacrifices I made, and yet, it seemed my family saw none of it. Their priorities were clear, and I was not on the list. Weeks later, I discovered something far worse. My parents, the ones who didn't care enough to attend my graduation, had been using my academic credentials behind my back. Bank statements and emails revealed loans taken in my name, all with the supposed purpose of helping the family. I had been naive to trust them with even a shred of financial responsibility. My anger grew with every document I uncovered. They had ignored my milestones and at the same time, exploited my accomplishments for their gain. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, legal, and deeply personal. I realized that if I didn't act, they would continue to take, manipulate, and control every aspect of my life. Determined not to be a victim, I sought advice from a trusted lawyer, someone who had handled family disputes before. The lawyer's eyes widened as I laid out the evidence, each transaction more shocking than the last. "Your parents really did this? Using your degree and good name without your consent?" she asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "Yes," I replied, my voice shaking but firm. "They didn't care about my graduation, but they cared about my credit, my reputation, my achievements. It's time I reclaim everything they've taken." Her nod was reassuring, a signal that I wasn't alone in this fight. We began drafting a plan. Legal notices, account freezes, and a strategy to confront the financial institutions involved. Every step was meticulous, calculated, and deliberate. I couldn't let emotion cloud judgment. Revenge required patience, precision, and the element of surprise. Meanwhile, my sister remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. She continued her life, oblivious to the repercussions of her parents' actions and her own complicity. Her overconfidence would soon be her downfall, as every family favors and financial missteps would unravel in ways she couldn't predict. I also focused on building my independence. Beyond legal actions, I invested time in growing my career, networking, and securing clients who valued my expertise. My graduation diploma wasn't just paper, it was a symbol of the life I had earned, one I intended to protect and leverage. At night, I would sit in my apartment, reviewing bank statements and legal documents, imagining the moment my parents would realize the consequences of their actions. Each piece of evidence was a puzzle, and the picture it formed was a damning portrait of betrayal. I let the anger fuel me, turning it into determination, turning hurt into strategy. Every phone call, every meeting with my lawyer, reinforced a singular truth: I would no longer allow my family to take what was rightfully mine. The debts they racked up in my name would be reversed, their misuse of my achievements exposed, and their disregard for me laid bare for all to see. Yet, despite the rage, I remained calm and composed in public. I smiled at colleagues, laughed with friends, and presented an image of success unshaken by family treachery. Inside, however, I meticulously plotted each step of my plan, making sure no detail was overlooked. Patience, I knew, was as powerful as confrontation. The first legal letters were sent, discreetly but firmly stating my claims and demanding repayment. I watched as the shock spread among my parents. They had not anticipated resistance, especially not from the one they had disregarded for years. Their arrogance was their weakness. In those weeks, I also took care to safeguard my own life. New bank accounts, updated security measures, and an independent support system ensured that no further exploitation could occur. The realization hit me hard. Their betrayal could have ruined me if I hadn't acted decisively. As the legal process unfolded, I documented everything. Emails, letters, bank statements, all meticulously filed. This wasn't just about money, it was about accountability, exposing the truth, and finally establishing boundaries that had never existed in my family. By the end of the first phase, I felt a mixture of vindication and exhaustion. I was no longer the ignored child at graduation. I was an empowered adult, capable of challenging even the people who should have loved and protected me. This was only the beginning, but it was a decisive first step in reclaiming my life. After the first round of legal letters, I realized my parents weren't going to admit their wrongdoing quietly. Their initial shock quickly morphed into defiance. As they tried to downplay the seriousness of their actions, I had anticipated this. So every argument they presented was met with documented proof, leaving no room for denial. I also started confronting my sister, who had indirectly benefited from their favoritism and my parents' misuse of my credentials. At first, she laughed off my accusations, claiming I was overreacting, but when I showed her the clear trail of emails, bank records, and forged documents, her smug smile disappeared, replaced by unease. Meanwhile, my lawyer and I developed a strategic timeline for public exposure. This wasn't just about correcting financial abuse. It was about revealing the reality of my family's unfair treatment. Carefully curated evidence would reach the right people, ensuring they could no longer manipulate their narrative without consequences. I discovered they had taken loans under my name multiple times over the past year, funneling the money toward my sister's lavish lifestyle. They had treated my graduation and achievements like a mere tool for their benefit. Every document I found fueled my determination, turning my initial anger into a calculated plan. Each night, I meticulously reviewed every transaction, every communication, and every loophole my parents thought they could exploit. I developed a methodical approach: legal action, public exposure, and financial reclamation, all synchronized to hit at the perfect moment. Timing, I knew, would amplify the impact of my eventual revenge. Even though my parents believed they were untouchable, I began quietly building a support network. Colleagues, friends, and financial advisors became allies in my effort to protect what I had earned. They were my silent army, ensuring that when the time came, I would have both resources and witnesses to back every claim. My sister, meanwhile, remained unaware of the storm brewing in the background. She continued flaunting gifts and opportunities derived from the misuse of my credentials. Her arrogance blinded her to the fact that every action had a consequence, and soon, those consequences would be unavoidable. The pressure began to affect my parents. I noticed subtle changes in their behavior: hesitation in phone calls, defensive responses, and the occasional slip revealing their anxiety. It was clear they were beginning to realize that their control over my life was eroding rapidly. I also focused on strengthening my financial independence. Investments, savings, and professional networking became crucial tools. Not only did I need to protect myself from further exploitation, but I also wanted to ensure my parents couldn't claim that my independence was fragile or unearned. I documented every encounter, recording conversations when legally permissible, and taking detailed notes when not. This evidence would be essential in any potential court proceedings, ensuring that no denial or revision of history could undermine my claims. I was building an airtight case, leaving no room for excuses. While the legal and financial preparations were underway, I also considered the emotional payoff. I wanted my parents to understand, viscerally, that neglecting me and exploiting my accomplishments would no longer be tolerated. The satisfaction of reclaiming both respect and resources would be profound. Each email I sent, each lawyer consultation, and each financial maneuver was done with precision. I wasn't acting on impulse. Every move was part of a bigger, meticulously planned strategy. They had underestimated me, and underestimation would be their downfall. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, my confidence grew. I had transformed from a hurt, ignored graduate into a force capable of challenging and correcting the injustices imposed by those who should have supported me. I was finally seizing control. Then came the first breakthrough. A major financial institution froze the questionable loans under my name. The letters arrived in my mailbox, stamped with official seals, marking the tangible start of my reclamation. I allowed myself a brief smile, knowing this was just the beginning. With this initial victory, my plan for public exposure took shape. I prepared a narrative, supported by evidence, highlighting the dual betrayal, emotional neglect, and financial exploitation. Carefully curated, this story would not only protect me legally but also ensure my parents' actions could no longer hide behind family loyalty or assumptions of trust. I anticipated backlash from my family, denial, anger, and perhaps attempts at persuasion would come. But I was ready. I had prepared responses for every possible argument, every emotional manipulation tactic. My resolve was unwavering, and my evidence was unassailable. Meanwhile, I maintained my public life, attending work, social events, and networking opportunities. To the outside world, I remained composed and successful. Internally, I was strategizing, planning the next phase of my family's reckoning. My dual life calm outwardly, Relentless inwardly was necessary to maintain the element of surprise. I began considering the ultimate reveal. Every document, every recorded conversation, every bank statement would converge into a public unveiling. My parents had believed their favoritism and exploitation would remain hidden. They were wrong. Every secret would surface, every betrayal exposed. By the end of this part of the plan, I felt the first taste of control returning to my life. I was no longer the overlooked child at graduation. I was a strategist, reclaiming authority and asserting independence. The path ahead was still challenging, but each step was deliberate, ensuring no misstep could derail the plan. The day of the final confrontation arrived, and I was prepared. I had compiled every single document, bank statement, and email that proved my parents' abuse. There was no room for denial, no escape from accountability, and no chance for manipulation. I invited both my parents and my sister to a neutral location, ensuring witnesses would see the evidence unfold. Their confidence was palpable. They believed I had no power to truly challenge them. But as the first envelope of documents hit the table, their expressions changed instantly. Shock spread across their faces as I began detailing every unauthorized loan, every forged signature, and every attempt to exploit my achievements. They attempted to argue, deflect, and manipulate, but I had anticipated every excuse. Each rebuttal they tried to make crumbled under the weight of proof. My sister, previously smug and dismissive, looked pale as I revealed how she had benefited from their favoritism. Every gift, every lavish expense she had received came at my direct expense. Her arrogance dissolved into panic as the undeniable truth unfolded. The financial institutions involved confirmed the irregularities live over a video call. Lawyers, auditors, and witnesses provided real-time verification of the evidence I had presented. My parents' authority and confidence disintegrated in front of everyone. I paused to let the gravity of the situation sink in. Their pattern of favoritism and exploitation was now exposed publicly, with witnesses documenting every moment. No longer could they control the narrative or ignore the consequences of their actions. My parents tried to salvage their pride, attempting to argue about intentions and misunderstandings. I calmly reminded them that intentions did not erase consequences, nor did apologies reverse the financial abuse. Every claim they made was met with documentation that proved the opposite. I then turned to my sister and her friends, showing them the financial and emotional manipulations they had benefited from. They watched in disbelief, realizing that every indulgence had come from my hard work and their parents' misuse of my credentials. The shock was tangible and the humiliation complete. Even as my parents scrambled to regain composure, I introduced the final piece of my plan: public disclosure. Carefully curated, the story was sent to trusted journalists, financial institutions, and family friends. The narrative could no longer be controlled, manipulated, or hidden. By the time the last documents were reviewed and the confirmations logged, my parents were silent. They had finally understood the weight of their choices, the magnitude of their negligence, and the consequences of their exploitation. Their dominance over me had ended. I had turned their neglect and manipulation into a powerful lesson. Not only did I reclaim my finances and independence, but I also reestablished my dignity and authority within the family. I had transformed the pain they inflicted into a forceful lesson they would never forget. The satisfaction of seeing them confront reality was overwhelming. The arrogance that had defined their interactions with me for years was replaced by humility, shame, and regret. I had successfully flipped the tables, proving that careful strategy and determination always triumph over deceit and favoritism. As the session concluded, I reminded everyone present that justice and respect were not just words, they were earned through action. The evidence was undeniable, the consequences clear, and my authority restored. There was no room for argument, no further manipulation possible. Before leaving, I documented the final moments, ensuring that the record of accountability remained intact. Every participant witnessed my calm, methodical execution, reinforcing that calculated, informed action was more powerful than anger or revenge alone. Finally, with a sense of closure, I allowed myself to smile. The long hours of planning, investigation, and meticulous execution had culminated in complete vindication. My parents and sister had learned a lesson they would never forget, and my future was once again firmly in my hands. As I walked away from the confrontation, a feeling of empowerment washed over me. I had reclaimed my life, my finances, and my dignity. The past injustices no longer held any sway over me. I had turned every betrayal into an opportunity for justice and personal growth. I knew this story could help others facing similar manipulation or family favoritism. The proof was there: strategy, patience, and persistence could overcome even the most entrenched abuse. My parents' actions were exposed, my finances secured, and my dignity restored. And with this, I knew my journey was complete, but the lessons and story were too valuable to remain private. Subscribe my YouTube channel Epic Revenge.